Welcome back to AAT Learning Hub. The lymphatic system is our body's extensive drainage network. It is considered a part of our immune system and it also complements our circulatory system. There are three main functions of the lymphatic system. 1. Maintain fluid balance. 2. Defense against pathogens. And 3. Fat absorption. Let's look at the first function of the lymphatic system. Maintenance of fluid balance. Blood from arterioles enter capillaries. From the capillaries, oxygen and nutrients reach the tissues, while carbon dioxide and waste from the tissues enter the capillaries and flow into the venules. During this exchange process, the watery component of the blood, which is the plasma, also seeps out into the interstitial space. You have the capillaries here, cells here, and the space between is called the interstitial space. When plasma seeps out of the capillaries into the interstitial space, it's called interstitial fluid. Due to osmotic pressure, most of the fluid is sucked back into the venous end of the capillaries. The remaining 10% gets pulled into the lymphatic system. This excess fluid, when it enters the lymphatic vessels, gets the name lymph. Lymph means clear water in Latin, and the fluid gets this name because it's colorless, just like water. Simple? Okay, let's get into the details. Why do you think the excess fluid needs to be drained from the interstitial space? 1. To prevent edema. If the fluid remains in the interstitial space, it will cause the tissues and cells to swell up, which in certain conditions can even be fatal. 2. If the fluid seeping out of the capillaries remain in the interstitial space, then the blood will start getting thicker and thicker with every cycle because it is losing its watery component. Also, oxygen delivery will get slow, leading to death of tissues. Hence, it's very important for the fluid to get back into the circulation. So how does the lymphatic system help? The lymphatic capillaries are found intertwined with the blood capillaries. When the interstitial space has excess fluid, the pressure in the interstitial space will increase. This pressure will push the fluid into the lymphatic capillaries. The lymphatic capillary walls have a single layer of epithelial cells which overlap each other. There are anchoring filaments, which are protein structures that connect the lymphatic capillaries to the surrounding tissues. When the pressure in the interstitial space increases, the anchoring filaments will help the epithelial cell flap open inward, allowing the fluid to flow in. Now the pressure inside the lymphatic capillary becomes high and the flap closes, preventing backflow. So from the lymphatic capillaries, this fluid, which is now called lymph, enters the lymphatic vessels. Lymphatic vessels are larger vessels. To ensure unidirectional flow, these vessels contain smooth muscles that contract to push the lymph upwards, while the valves in them prevent backflow. Apart from this, the pulsation of the nearby arteries also help push the lymph. Afferent lymphatic vessels. Afferent means towards. So afferent lymphatic vessels carry the unfiltered lymph into the lymph nodes. This unfiltered lymph will enter the lymph nodes. The main function of the lymph node is to filter the lymph of the foreign invaders like bacteria, viruses, and certain cancerous cells. The filtered lymph further moves upwards through the efferent lymphatic vessels. Efferent means moving away. So efferent lymphatic vessels drain into the lymphatic ducts and then into the right and left subclavian veins, which flow into the venous circulation, thereby maintaining blood volume. There are two lymphatic ducts, the right lymphatic duct and the thoracic duct. The right lymphatic duct collects the lymph from the right arm and the right side of the head and thorax and drains into the venous system at the junction between the right internal jugular and the right subclavian vein. The large thoracic duct receives lymph from the rest of the body and empties into the venous system at the junction between the left internal jugular and the left subclavian vein. So this is how fluid balance is maintained. While in blood, it's plasma, while in interstitial space, it's interstitial fluid, and while in lymphatic vessels, it's called lymph. Time for tidbits. The circulatory system is a closed system that starts in the heart, arteries, and ends in the heart, veins, while the lymphatic system is an open system that starts in the interstitial space and ends in the veins. The second function of lymphatic system is defense against pathogens. The unfiltered lymph through the afferent lymphatic vessel enters the lymph nodes. The afferent vessels have valves to prevent backflow of lymph. Lymph nodes or lymph glands are small kidney or bean-shaped structures. There are about 600 to 800 lymph nodes distributed throughout our body, while in the neck, axilla, chest, abdomen, and groin, they are found in groups or clusters. The center part of the lymph node is called the medulla and the outer part the cortex. The lymph nodes are like our armed forces. So the main function of the nodes is to scan for pathogens, including cancer cells, and destroy them. And for that, it requires WBCs or lymphocytes. From where will they get their share of lymphocytes? From the blood vessels here. This is the hilum where blood vessels enter and exit, and the efferent lymph vessel exits. So there are B cells in the outer part of the cortex and T cells in the inner part of the cortex. These cells scan for pathogens and initiate an immune response. The filtered lymph then, through the efferent lymphatic vessel, drains into the ducts and then into the circulation. Let's move on to the third function of the lymphatic system, which is fat absorption. The digested food from the stomach enters the small intestine. The wall of the small intestine has villi that absorbs most of the nutrients and passes it into the capillaries. However, lipids or fats, being larger molecules, cannot pass through the capillary walls. Also, lipids are not water-soluble, so they get packaged as chylomicrons. The lacteals, which are the lymphatic vessels in the small intestine, absorb the chylomicrons and transport them to the bloodstream, thereby providing energy. So to conclude, the three major roles of the lymphatic system: it returns fluid from the tissues back to the heart, it helps large molecules like hormones and lipids enter the bloodstream, and it helps with the immune surveillance. This is Bhumika Anand on AAT Learning Hub. Please do watch the video on microcirculation and then revisit this video for a better understanding. Thanks for watching and happy learning.